In this short video, I'm going to share my thoughts on the current market and hopefully answer the question, is buy-to-let dead? Hi, I'm Mark Lloyd and I'm co-founder of Property Master Academy, and I've also been a property investor since 2005. With house prices seemingly going crazy, although watch my last video and you may think differently, with inflation over 6% at the time of this video and it's going to go higher, Section 24 tax, the general public and the newspapers hating landlords, legislation, is it the right time to get into property investing or out? There's no doubt that property investing is really hard, not just now, but in general, and it seems as though it's got harder and it does feel like everyone's working against us. So is it worthwhile? Well, let's take a closer look at what has happened since 2016. In 2016, we had a change in stamp duty, where the Chancellor decided that if you are buying a second home or an investment property, you are going to pay an additional 3% surcharge on top of the existing stamp duty bands. So what was previously a nil rate band became 3% and so on. Then, in 2017, we had the Section 24 rules introduced, where essentially if you owned a property in your personal name, which everyone did for tax purposes because of two main reasons. Firstly, you had a wear and tear allowance at 10%, and you were able to deduct the interest on your mortgages against tax as a legitimate cost. The government removed both of those, and that made a huge impact on landlords with larger portfolios, such that a lot have either sold up or moved their properties into a limited company, where those restrictions don't apply. In 2018, the UK and the EU finally struck a deal with the Brexit Referendum, but this triggered a weakening of the pound, which had another negative impact on the UK property market for local investors. In 2019, there was the Tenant Fee Ban. Now, whilst that didn't affect landlords directly, it meant that letting agents could no longer charge tenants a fee. So who do you think they charge instead? You got it, the landlord. So the landlord now pays all the letting agents' fees, which means that rents have to rise to compensate. Not a very well thought out plan, is it? Then, of course, in 2020, COVID struck and you could not now evict tenants if they didn't pay the rent, which as a result has meant that arrears have climbed dramatically to all-time highs. Not through anyone's fault as such, but it's the landlord who ultimately pays. In 2021, the electrical condition report became mandatory for all new tenancies, and in a few years' time, the energy performance rating for rented properties will need to be grade C or above, otherwise you won't be able to rent out that property again, increasing the cost to us as investors. So you might be asking yourself, if it's that bad, why on earth would I want to invest in property? Good question. Well, firstly, it's a great way of preserving capital, far better than any other investment. There's a reason why a lot of the really wealthy people around the world have a large proportion of their wealth tied up in property, because it's considered to be safe and inflationary proof. Now, with inflation running at over 6-7% at the time of this video, it means your property is going up in value, but the mortgage will stay the same. Now, if you compare that to money in the bank, it may seem like you have the same amount of money, but the reality is that it's worth less as the cost of living has risen. Secondly, the UK market has very strong fundamentals because we do not have enough houses. By the government's own statistics, they reckon that we need around 300,000 houses to be built each year, and we've not managed to do that for a long time. So that creates strong demand. Now, of course, the UK is a small island, so we only have limited resources on which to build. However, it may surprise you to hear that less than 10% of all land in the UK is built upon. The rest is mostly greenbelt, which can't normally be used for housing. Then, of course, we have the power of leverage. Property is one of the few assets that you can borrow against, and it pays for itself through rental income. How cool is that? So if you've got, let's say, £100,000 to invest, and ignoring buying costs for a second, you could purchase £400,000 worth of property, because you only need to use £25,000 per property with the other £75,000 on a mortgage. But that's not all. Let's suppose the value of those houses increases by 5% over the year, bearing in mind that average growth rates have been higher. Then that makes each property worth £105,000. So you now have an additional £20,000. Now let's face it, 5% is not a fantastic return, is it? Well, that's also not correct. Your return is greater than 20% because you've made a profit of £20,000 on your £100,000 that you started with. But that is excluding the rental income, which will increase your return for that year to maybe 25%. Now, this is one of the things that is never really understood properly. Now, I don't know about you, but 25% return in 1 year, that's pretty good, isn't it? So what's happening in the market? Well, over the past few years, the number of houses has increased by just over 200,000 houses per year. However, the number of rental properties decreased during this time by over 80,000 houses per year, partly due to landlords exiting the market. But this has created these large increases in rents due to lack of supply. Do you think that will continue? Well, I do for many years yet, so I'm still investing. And remember, investing is about the long term, not what happens today, not what happens tomorrow, next week, next month, or next year. You buy property and wait. Now, whether you buy in your personal name or a company name will depend on a few things, primarily your tax position and your long-term goals. And in my opinion, it's essential to discuss this with a property accountant before you buy your first property. Well, there you go. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, it would be a great help if you could hit that like button so that others just like you will get to see this video. And also subscribe to our channel so that you get notified of videos as we upload them each week. Appearing on your screen right now are some additional videos that will help you with your property business. Thanks for listening.